You know, I've very few first-time movie-going experiences that I remember. I remember seeing Indiana Jones for the first time. I remember seeing Star Wars. This is one of maybe a handful at best of films where I found myself applauding halfway through. And I say that not to patronize, because I think everything about this film is remarkable.
That's great. Thanks for saying so.
You knew that working on it at all, that you were maybe stretching lots and lots of limits for what we've seen?
We knew we were stretching limits because we could feel the tearing sensation that goes with that stretching. I mean, we were really feeling the stress of trying to push beyond things that we had done before. And sometimes you tend to overreach and you find out you really can't do it much better than you did before because you were pushing 100% back that time, you know. But fortunately, I was working with really good people that I had worked with before, and we were able to go beyond, which was great, especially with the special effects, the ILM people and so on.
They get better as time goes on too, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
I like to nudge them a little bit.
Do you?
Sure.
Are you tough on them?
Well, I'm not tough on them. They're tough on themselves. They have very high standards. But I like to throw a kind of a challenge down to them, And they said before they started this film they didn't know if they could do the shots. And I said, well, what does that mean? We're going to find out in 6 months. They said, no, we'll talk about it for a few weeks, and we'll look at our software, and we'll think of ways to solve the shots. And then it became a give and take. They'd come back and say, well, if you don't move the camera on the shot, I think we can do it, and things like that. But I was pushing them. When
you say difficult, and they say maybe we can't do that, is that specifically maybe this whole liquid steel concept?
No, they knew they could do some of the shots. They just didn't know if they could do all of the shots, and some of them were pretty tricky. There's a shot where he walks through the bars and his face kind of deforms and goes around the bars. As I was writing that, I was thinking, this is going to be really hard. But it also seemed like a perfect little set piece of what you can do with computer animation, and they pulled it off.
Can you take me into the casting session when you were looking for the other Terminator? What did you make these guys do?
Well, it's interesting because he doesn't have a lot of dialogue, so it had to be a kind of a physical presence, a way of moving, of behaving. To me, it was about senses. I wanted to see that this guy was always alert, always hyper-aware, and I wanted to see a difference between what he was like when he was just imitating human behavior and kind of his little pseudo-emotions when he's being nice and polite and congenial, and when he sees his target. So what I'd have them do is I'd say, show me a change. Show me you simulating a human being perfectly. Then show me you dropping that and becoming the machine who's on target. And Robert did it the best. But there was also a whole bunch of physical behaviors that had to be worked out. How do you walk? How do you move? How do you walk and move when you're imitating a human being and trying to be camouflaged? How do you walk and move when you're in a room by yourself? And I didn't have the answers. I wanted to hear creative answers from the actors. And some of them were pretty goofy.
But they were fun.
And some of them were really interesting. One of the things that Robert did that I liked was he walked into the room, he knelt down in this kind of Indian scout stance, although slightly inhuman, put his hand on the floor, and then stood back up. And I said, what did you do? And he said, if I can sense things, if I can sample objects by touching them and imitate them, then I must be able to touch something and know if someone's been there. And I said, that's great. See, that was the kind of thing I was looking for.
And there's also
it was a mental process as well.
Yeah, there's also that kind of animal instinct,
right,
to do that.
Yeah, except that it's an animal at a level that's so primal that it doesn't growl or doesn't show emotion or anything like an insect. An insect can be in the battle of its life, can be fighting for its life, and it has no emotion.
When you developed the first film and then went on to develop the second one, is the challenge always to make the scripts for, especially a science fiction film, intelligent?
Well, I think you have to, the trick for me is overlaying in such a way that the film works at different levels. You take a fairly simple and straightforward premise, like a chase, and then you overlay on that certain ideas that don't get in the way. You know what I mean? Don't obstruct the forward momentum of the story.
Or enhance it.
Yeah, but enhance it in a way. Or in a way, kind of, you can even propel with an idea, as long as the idea is simple, and then you're just doing kind of variations on a theme. I think a film can work at different levels. I think a 10-year-old could see this movie. It's R-rated, but a 10-year-old could understand what was going on, and hopefully an aerospace engineer could get a lot out of it.
Yeah, there are different levels you can reach this film. What are you doing next? Are you going to take some time off? Or?
Well, I'm going to take some time off, and then I'm going to be doing. I've got a number of things that I'm developing with my production company, Lightstorm Entertainment, that I'll be producing, and then the next thing I'm going to direct is a film called The Crowded Room, which is about a man with multiple personality disorder. True story. No special effects.
just good hard emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice job, James. We're
Thank
proud
you.
of you in this
Thank you
one.
very much.